Jim, welcome to Early Days.
Hi, Clara. Let's get it.
I spend my whole life chasing you. When will you come home to me?
Yeah, let's talk AI. There was a lot of people in 23 that were looking at it, but they didn't know where to start. And I think you, along with other builders inside of Pleb Lab, were working on it in 23, and it was still kind of like I remember Jimmy's song, and I love Jimmy, by the way. Love you, Jimmy. We're calling it a fad. Why did you continue working on it? Even other Bitcoiners who we respect were calling it a fad.
Yeah, I'm just a kind of a general purpose technologist, so I have a background in circuits. That's actually part of where Cascader gets its name. And I could just kind of see just my intuition is usually pretty good just from that type of background. And I could just see AI as like an elemental technology. So I wanted to play around with it. And I saw over the summer, I think it was the HRF or somebody had the Bolt.Fun hackathon in 23, and some really interesting ideas came out of that. So I was keenly interested in that. You know, I know some people made APIs. You could basically, leverage your API keys to sell to other people with Bitcoin Lightning, and that has numerous benefits from, inclusion to privacy and censorship resistance. So I think that's really interesting. And I started looking at it more closely. And at TabConf 2023, I partnered with Topher and Austin here at Pleb Lab. We decided to create a team to propose a new NIP that effectively front ran
Was
MCP.
that the DVM one, or which one? Which one was that
So
one?
we made like an alternative to DVM that is more it's more about it's less, or say it's more automated, it's more like scan friendly. In other words, you publish what you're looking for. It's a lot like MCP. You publish what you offer and other people consume it. And it has like an input and output schema, like it's eerily similar to MCP. And we even made it so you could search it. You actually hash the input schema and the output schema so you can search based on the formats that you're expecting. You could even, as a supplier, possibly have different options and settings for the input and output schema. And the idea in my head at the time was you can create workflows with them. And that's where I got the idea of Cascader from. So we built a very simple project at
Real quick. So, because I want to make this very like pleb friendly, just so that way we don't lose people who are listening to the podcast. Explain that really like to the average person who's listening to this and they don't understand what MCP or DV or like this DVM thing that you're
sure.
describing.
Yeah, let's zoom out. So whenever you create really any kind of system, but especially software systems, there's gonna, generally speaking, be an input and there's gonna be an output. So let's use the simple example of using ChatGPT. The input um, is the question or the prompt you give it, maybe even your set personal settings. Let's say you have settings of don't ever curse or respond only in emojis, right? You can get crazy with it. It'll supply those inputs and then it'll go into the magical LLM machine. The LLM machine is a very sophisticated neural net that's good at picking the next most probable word. So I call it autocorrect on steroids.
Okay.
That machine will go through that process, and then it'll spit out an answer. And that's your output.
Okay.
Okay. And it may put out more than one output. For example, a lot of these LLMs, they have like the final output, but they also have the reasoning output. If you've ever heard of a reasoning model, it'll go through first, I thought about this step and that step, right? So it actually has almost two channels of output. One is showing your work, the proof of work behind it, and then the other is the actual final result. Okay. And so with our project NIP 105, we called it Data Buffet. because you could scan the network and then take a buffet of whatever you're looking for. And so the input schema and the output schema is almost like, I think of it as like a puzzle piece, right? It fits a certain way into a workflow or a bigger application. And so at the hackathon, we won an award
This was in 23.
in 23 when we published it. It's still on GitHub. We never got merged because we never pushed it hard, but we kind of front ran MCP because that's effectively what MCP is. It basically broadcast what your AI system has to offer, or not. It doesn't even necessarily have to be an AI system. What your system has to offer in the form of inputs and outputs, and then the LLM takes that into account and then just makes sure that it conforms to it and uses it like a tool. And so at the time, all we did was, pimp out your ChatGPT keys or your Midjourney keys to do image generation or text generation. And I realized, that's like those are two very simple Lego blocks, but I realized, all these are Lego blocks. They can be recombined. And so I came up with the idea of Cascader in circuits. A cascaded systems when you combine two circuits in series. So we have all this audio equipment here. Those are cascaded systems. They go feed one into the other in order to create a final result. And so I was just thinking about how, that's going to be the future of software systems. So the first version of Cascader was like a workflow builder. And then I came to the realization that the AI is going to be so good, it's going to know at runtime how to make the workflow for you. So it's kind of irrelevant. It's more about creating robust tools and actually starting with solving concrete business objectives first and creating kick-ass agents or even proto agents. And then once you've kind of mastered that, then you can create an interoperability layer around them with Bitcoin, things like Bitcoin and open systems, so that you can share that through an economy.
Yeah, so let's rewind real quick, because I want to really get this back to like understanding the 50-yard line kind of view of this all, because I'm really slow, dude. You know this. You hang out with me every day. So you're saying like these MCPs are kind of like like circuits on a circuit board in a way, and it's trying to streamline a pathway to a desired location or a desired output that a user like myself is trying to achieve, or like even something like I even think of like an effects pedal or something that you would have in a chain that I'm trying to get to a desired sound in a guitar. Like if I'm trying to get Jimmy Page's sound from Stairway to Heaven, I would link these chains of pedals using a Marshall amp, and and then I would have a Les Paul or something. Obviously, I'm not Jimmy Page, but I could get that tone because
they're tools. They're tools that
Yeah.
you combine to get the effect
Yeah.
you're looking for, and they're tools that are well defined in terms of their inputs and outputs, basically how they're going to behave in the real world. And the LLM is smart enough and has a robust enough understanding of language. It's really a very sophisticated language understanding machine, a flexible language understanding machine. And it's able to understand at runtime what your requirements are and then select, generally speaking, ideally select the perfect tool at runtime. So if you told that I want to sound like Jimmy Page, it would know how to tune it up for Jimmy Page perfectly, and then you start playing and it would sound like Jimmy Page. That's generally the idea. And so MCP is a standard that's backed by Anthropic, one of the big labs, that specifies how you go about broadcasting your tools to an LLM. They don't necessarily have to be, they can be AI tools like AI subsystems, or they can just be like, a good example is I saw a great library for and knowledge base for creating musical instruments in Python. So that would be an example. You can make an MCP server that's really good at and has a really good scannable repository of different notes and styles that you could then go to the LLM and say, hey, make me a song that sounds like
Yeah.
Jimmy Page or spin the wheel.
Right.
And so it's a flexible interoperable system. And so that's kind of the future we're moving towards, and I feel very vindicated alongside my fellow pleblabians that we were able to see that coming pretty early.
That's a thing that's kind of surprising, dude. I think just just me being in the lab and seeing you guys kind of work, and at the time I remember thinking I was like, why is no one else working on this? And I remember thinking that and thinking like, what's going on? And then now these days, whenever you guys are working on something, I don't even second guess it. Like I don't even like Oliver doing the AR stuff. I don't second guess it. I'm like, oh, he's just early. Like everybody will be working on that in 2026.
No one bats 1,000, right? But and I'm certain that I haven't, but in general, I think if you just reason from first principles, a lot of things you can see before you can see them coming. And it's kind of obvious to me that AI is kind of this elemental force that's going to be very important to harness and very important to master, much like gunpowder. That's the way I look at it.
Think do you think it's like impossible to take on something like an open AI, or that doesn't matter anymore, like DeepSeek and all this kind of stuff? Or like, yeah, how do you see that kind of playing out?
There's so much capital and know-how that's required to run those labs. So I don't mean it as disrespect. I think they're, at least for the time being, for the foreseeable future, they're going to be critical. I mean, look, they have the backing of the United States government, more or less.
Even
So
Microsoft is getting
they,
into it with them now.
that's what I'm saying. So they're well staffed, they're well researched, they're very smart people. I don't mean it as disrespect, but I do kind of see how it does after a certain point kind of get commoditized, the LLM game. It's like it's an ever shifting game. It's a hyper competitive environment. And so I saw that early and I was like, I don't want to hang out here and like just make my own LLM or just make one of these like lower level systems. I want to master creating, I don't want to master like, the I don't know what to say, like one of the super low level tools. I want to master creating a symphony. I want to master putting it all together into a specific application, living at the edge. And so I always say it's like a U-shaped market. It's like either you're the lab, you got a lot of backing, you got a lot of capital, a lot of cheap capital, and people build businesses that rely on you. Okay, that's a strength there, no doubt. And then there's also just building at the edge where it's like you're so close to the customer, pretty much delivering exactly what they're looking for. If you're not exactly what you're looking for, you're close enough to where they're gonna, shell out because you're helping their productivity significantly. So, I've always been that way, even when I was an electrical engineer, of kind of opting more for the application level. And I respect people that are more at, I'll call it the protocol or the lower like fundamentals level. But, when I was a electrical engineer, you'd get ASICs or ICs, and I'd be like, all right, give me the specs. Let me look at it. Let me see what I can do with this and how I can invent something with this. That's basically where I was at.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder that like maybe maybe it's similar to like the PC revolution where there were some people that went off and try to build the personal computer, right? And then there was other people that tried to build the operating systems, and then there was like this ragtag group that that try to go build software. Um,
Yeah, and it's all fractal. It's all layers of abstraction, right? And
yeah.
that's one of my favorite movies is The Pirates of Silicon
Oh
Valley.
yeah,
Have you
dude, I
ever seen
love
that?
that movie so much.
And they were phone freaking with the
Yeah,
blue boxes.
yeah,
That's one of my favorite
yeah.
stories.
I love that movie so much. Mm. Yeah, I love that movie so much. That's one of my favorite movies. That scene where Steve Ballmer like freezes the he's like, this should be hung up in a museum, and then it's like you see Steve Ballmer, and then it's like This is where Steve Jobs convinces IBM, the IBM, to give us some 2-bit outfit out of Seattle. We were just in a motel. And Paul Allen had like some friend of a friend that had an operating system that he would sell him for $15,000, and it was called DOS. And they sold it to IBM for like a contract, and they promised them that they could sell it to whoever they wanted. And that's how they created their empire.
Well, I thought it was so cool. I mean, I'm sure this is all like dramatized and
Yeah, sure.
hyperbole,
Yeah.
but I thought it was cool. You kind of had the contrast of Steve Jobs,
Yeah.
more of the cult leader,
Totally.
and then you had Bill Gates as more of the poker player.
Yeah.
Because he would go into those deals and be like, oh, we're getting the pre-orders at least minimum 25,000, And they'd be like, what are you talking about, man? He's like, oh, well, that's what all our other customers are doing.
Yeah.
They didn't have any other customers. He was just really good at bluffing.
Dude, it was great too, because like yeah, they both had their own distinct ways of selling. And it was funny because yeah, like you said, like Bill Gates was that guy, at least in the movie, he was that guy where he was like, he was telling Bomber, he's like, Bomber, we're like these pair of jokers right now. We don't have anything that anybody wants.
Nobody needs us.
Nobody
Yeah.
needs us. And
Yeah.
there's nothing worse in business when no one needs you. He goes, you got to make something that people need. And it was so funny. And he's like, and then they came up with that idea. It's just being scrappy, dude. I mean, just being an entrepreneur, especially in Bitcoin, like you got to be scrappy. Got to have that resilience.
I learned that. I learned
Yeah.
that from wrestling. I mean, you guys are probably tired of hearing
Dude, I'm
about
not tired
that,
of hearing it.
but it was a huge part of my life. Just, I've been around people that are just very high level like that, and they're very admirable, tough people. And it's like you learn just to not take no for an answer and just figure it out. Just extreme self-reliance, extreme ownership.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most important things I've learned. That's why I love coaching, is just teaching that to young people. Just the value in that type of mindset, and how, especially in a day and age like now where everything's changing. We don't know if your job's going to be here in 2 years, let alone 10 years. And it's like, really the people that are going to thrive are the people that are flexible and tough, that can figure it out.
Yeah. What have you seen because you've been working on building Cascader for a while now. Before that, you were at Sphinx. Like, what did you learn at Sphinx? And then what have you learned post Sphinx? Like, was there anything that you see that you learn and that now you're doing it differently? And yeah, and just talk about that kind of transition from.
Yeah, so it was my first Bitcoin job, and it was great. There's a lot of very smart people there. The team was very big. I learned so much about just the Lightning Network in general. My core job was mostly building, iOS and Mac applications. So I just learned a lot about, how to get things done, how to work inside an open source project, how to evaluate. It had, I don't know how many lines of code, like 200,000 lines of code. So it was a lot of code. It was figuring out, basically where we're at, triangulating on where we're at, and then where we want to go, just being able to work inside a really complex project like that. So I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot from, the CEO there, very bright guy, internet OG, somebody I respect a lot, that, very radically open-minded in a good way. Very results oriented like myself.
Is that Paul Toy you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, just the willingness to kind of pioneer a lot of different spaces. So I learned a lot from that. Obviously when you're not the boss, you're gonna have your own ideas of how things should be run differently. I'm not necessarily gonna tell him how to do things, but
yeah,
I think most Bitcoiners probably are this way.
Yeah.
You have your own way of doing things and your own way of thinking, and your own way of putting your own stamp on how things are done, how you move forward. So grateful for the opportunity there, and just building Cascader, doing it my way, like Frank Sinatra.
Yeah. How do you run your team now compared to, how they did it?
Yeah, so personally, I'm a big believer in extreme ownership, so I'm very laissez-faire. I tell people, you know, what the mission is, and this is kind of how Jocko Willing describes it. He says, what we do is we give you the intel, we tell you where the bad guys are, what building they're in, and then we say go make a plan to get them and review it with me, just so that you don't go off the rails. But um, that's much better than telling people, hey, you got to go through, through door A on stairwell C and kick it down and use this sidearm and do this and that. When you do that, they get there, the plan starts to fail, and they say, F this guy, he got it wrong. And then they look at you and they blame you. Instead, if you tell people, this is the general result I'm trying to achieve, this is the outcome I need from you, um, go ahead and figure it out. People appreciate that more. People appreciate autonomy and the ability to master that. And I think we've talked about this before off air, but I see one of the measures of success for me is being able to build people up and see them, effectively be able to be independent, be able to start something on their own if they want to. You try to keep them there as long as you can, out of a place of win-win. But you really want to be building up, a deep bench of killers. And
Yeah, for sure.
ideally, you can win them over with loyalty, but ultimately that's not your control. But I really do believe in creating win-win relationships and building people up. So that's kind of my style. With that comes extreme accountability too. So, some people we don't vibe well, and I have measured, patient conversations with them, explain to them what I need from them, and if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. We move on. But there are a lot of people that stay, and we have a great relationship.
Yeah, I think you touched you touched on a good one thing there, because there's a I was talking to G last night, because he just launched his Alamo Labs thing, and he came down to Bitcoin Builders Club and stuff, and where he had some questions for me and stuff, and we talked about what you just said about the, like, how do you lead individual people, and then how do you get them to be just as good as the next one and the next one. And I said exactly what you just said. I was like, you give them everything. Like, you give them your whole playbook. You teach them everything that you know, and you try to make them better than you can.
And I learned that from wrestling too. I mean,
Yeah.
so I coach now, but kind of like training for coaching was mentoring younger guys.
Yeah.
You're not quite a coach, but you are kind of a coach. Some of my proudest moments are just watching people way overachieve
Yeah.
because of what you taught them. And there's one guy in particular named Mark. His name's Mark Giordano. Our dads were really good friends back in the old Italian neighborhood, and he was like 3 years older than me. He was my teammate my freshman year. And I got smacked around my freshman year. I didn't know what I was doing. And also, they were bigger than me. I was, ninth grade. They were 12th grade. And he would come to my house, and my dad would throw him a few bucks to roll around with me and teach me things. And he was a very patient teacher. I can be kind of type A. I can be very intense. We joke about it here, but he was very calm and patient with me and taught me a lot about demeanor, technique, like how to learn properly. And a lot of things that I learned, I still teach to this day. And
Mhm.
that's what a legacy really looks like, is these values, like these techniques, these cool things that you teach, these recipes you teach people that they can use to succeed. Like that's some of the most rewarding things in really any endeavor, but especially mentorship or coaching or leadership.
Yeah, 100%. I was yeah, I was giving him that advice, and I told him, I was like, yeah, you can't hold back on information, especially when it's going to benefit them. Um, the right thing to do is to give them all that information and help them be successful. And you want them to leave.
Yeah, you
Like,
take your ego out of it.
yeah, you entirely take your ego out of it, because, like, you want what's best for the individual. You want what's best for them.
Yeah.
Because what hopefully will happen is they will go out, be successful, and then they'll go and tell everybody how you helped them.
Yeah.
And and then the
that's the
next
side.
person will come going through the same thing through you, and then that's just a flywheel effect.
It's a virtuous cycle.
Yeah, it's a virtuous cycle, and that's why and then what will happen over time is you'll continuously get talent coming to your front door, because they'll just see that virtuous cycle like you're describing. And Yeah, that's what I told him. But yeah, I think you see that from a lot of coaches, and you see that from a lot of very winning, successful, um, yeah, like basketball, football, even colleges do that too as well. Anyways, let's jump into the AI stuff because I think the AI stuff is really important. Let's talk about the stuff that could go bad with AI if we don't have more based um, um, Bitcoin companies leading the charge. So I was in Tampa this past weekend, and one of the questions that we got was around AI, and there were some heavy hitters there, like Tom Long. What do you pronounce his name? Tom
Longo.
Longo. Like the other one of the Cardones was there.
He's my adopted uncle.
One of the he,
Longo is like Smith from the old Italian neighborhood.
well, he was there, and he knows his area of the thing, and he doesn't really know about the AI stuff. And one of the Cardones was there, and he doesn't really know about the AI stuff. And so when I came on the panel, I know enough, but I don't know too deep. But one of the things I do know is that if we don't have more Bitcoin founders leading the charge in AI, it's going to lead to a very dark times. And yeah, just talk about why it's so important to have more founders building in AI.
Yeah, you try to separate the man from the art, but it's kind of impossible. And, unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is influenced by politics. So I don't know if you caught the Joe Rogan podcast with Mark Andreessen.
Yeah, I
So
totally did.
Another internet OG.
He's kind of backpedaling a lot of what he did in his time.
Well,
especially with Trump in office.
One of the biggest things I took away from that was basically the approach of the Biden and Biden Harris admin, and what would have happened if she had won the election would have been they basically would have locked it down like the Manhattan Project, and they were telling them, don't do any new cryptocurrency, AI, drones, don't do any of that shit. Just stay out of it. We're gonna shut it all down. It's gonna be a controlled cartel, more or less. And I think that's incredibly dangerous, because then you can end up with a priest class that are the only ones with access to it. And imagine if the Industrial Revolution worked out that way. Like, if they just withheld all of the high level automation and steam that they were benefiting from, right? That would have created a much, it was already kind of a inequality machine. Eventually it worked out a little bit. It took time, but imagine only the House of Lords is allowed to touch this. You know what I mean? Like, that's the scary thing. So that was kind of a threat. And then you add in your surveillance stuff. So I feel pretty vindicated on that too, because I was kind of beating the drum pretty early on the privacy stuff and demonstrating how, Bitcoin Lightning payments, because they have great sender privacy with both 11, you have much better privacy assurances when using LLMs, APIs, and other components. And so now you have, on the bright side, you have the Mutiny guys repurposing their whole stack to do encrypted LLM sessions. So that's amazing. But then on the dark side, you have the Palantirs, and we kind of saw this coming. I know you probably saw it coming too.
I mean,
what is it, Citizen 4?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're gonna have the Oppenheimers, right? Like, they're gonna come out, and someone's gonna make the nuclear bomb.
Yeah, and it's incredibly dangerous, and I think it just comes back to like parity. It comes back to like gunpowder. It's like, all right, like, they're gonna embrace gunpowder. Well, I'm gonna create. They're gonna scan the data. Well, I'm gonna make fake data with AI. You know what I mean? Like,
but you have to have that. You have to.
And you need to have ethically aligned people. And so what you're getting at is, we want Bitcoiners, we want liberty focused people in on this fight. And that's the way I look at it. So I couldn't be happier that we're getting great minds like Marx and Tony, or is it Anthony now? Anthony, coming from Mutiny, rebranding to Open Secret. Like, that's amazing. Christopher, I know there's others in that space. There's the Routster guy I just found out about.
We need CASCDR funded. I was on the stage, and like there's a room full of family offices, investors, all these people there, and I was like, they're like, one of the questions was like, what do you need? And I was like, well, we need capital for these founders like Cascader. We're building like on AI, but with the beliefs that we have as Bitcoiners. Like open agents, like open secret, we need more capital for these people, because if you want to live in this totalitarian regime that OpenAI and some of these other people are making, WorldCoin and all that stuff, like this is not going to be a good world. Trust me, you want base Bitcoiners building this stuff. And that was my pitch to him. And yeah, Jim, I tried.
Yeah.
I literally tried, man.
Look, I've truly embraced nobody's coming to save you. So
Yeah,
we
I know.
have some
Yeah,
very
I know.
promising revenue streams starting to come to fruition now that I'm very excited about. So, it goes back to wrestling. Like my dad, we used to say, with you, without you, through you, by you, over you. I'm going that way. Like you can't stop me. So
Yeah,
I won't. You can't tell me no. So it really doesn't matter what anybody else does. It's just
yeah.
all on me.
No, I know that. I was just pleading my case to these people
Sure.
because that question was asked, and I'm like, what can you do? Like, this is what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't think they know. I think they think there's capital out there for the other side, but I think it resonated because there was like one person that came up to me. They were like, how serious is that? And I was like, oh no, it's very serious. Like it's going the other way. Like it's going, because if it happens where we get stable coins and Tether, and because the whole financial system is moving on to Bitcoin, like this is happening. ETFs, even might even get bonds. Like if this whole financial system moves on to Bitcoin, well, guess what happens next? We get this whole AI movement onto it as well too, and then guess what happens? Now they're not just calling up Stripe and all these other places and telling you to turn off your thing. They're just doing it automatically, and they're not checking in with you. And then all of a sudden, you're not making payments anymore. You're just completely off of their system. That's why it's important that we have another option for this.
AI helps the state scale. I mean, that's the truth. And, I was talking about the election probably last August or so with somebody, and I think it's clear, what would have happened if Biden and Kamala won is we were already kind of on a pretty dark
Path,
authoritarian path. But I warned somebody, I'm like, look, man, I think either way we're getting a police state, whether we like it or not. And I saw the writing on the wall that JD Vance was more or less a Palantir representative inside the White House. And you're like, they're going to go for it. It's going to be a different flavor than it probably would have been as the alternative. But it comes down to it helps the state scale, and they're scanning everything they possibly can about you. And it's up to you to protect your data and to embrace and invest in systems that build the world you want to see. It's literally that meme of the guy picking which path he's going to be on. That's really what it comes down to.
We finally got a sponsor. Can you believe it? Vintech. They're a legal firm out of Dallas, Texas, who Club Lab uses. We actually use Jim, who is this amazing gentleman, Central Texas lawyer, straight shooter, and he does legal expertise, and he has this amazing thing called Vintech. It's a place where you can get access to legal forms. You don't have to use ChatGPT to spin up some kind of gibberish. You can actually get these legal forms that are there already pre-built. You get access to his consulting 2 times a month. There's 25% off all his legal work that he applies to the network of attorneys that he knows. There's no long-term commitment. It's all for $199 a month. He also has this other thing called Vintech Plus, which is 3 hours of additional services per month, which is contract review, drafting, LLC, corporate formation, all that kind of stuff. That's for $999 a month. And it's affordable business legal stuff for startups, founders like yourself. Use the code PLEBLAB at myvintech.com and get 10% off your subscription. And a big thanks to Jim and the Vintech team for backing the builder community and helping us push things forward. All right, let's get back to the show. Who knows, man? I was reading there's a Reddit article. It's about the Citadel. The Citadel. I don't know if you've seen that post on Reddit. It's a guy who who invented the Citadel, and it's like from 2013 or whatever. It's like a time traveler post. It's nonsense to read, but he gets a couple things right. He gets the Citadel part right. He gets politicians front running governments buying Bitcoin, which they're doing right now. Politicians are front running buying Bitcoin before the governments buy it. So that's happening right now as we speak. And then guess what happens after that?
Police state.
No, so this is before they start hunting Bitcoiners. Like people start hunting well-known Bitcoiners. And that's the scary part. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like I was reading it, I was like, oh crap, this guy's literally like like talking about some scary shit. And then he starts talking about drones, like AI drones and stuff. Like it's crazy, dude. And then after that comes a police state, and then comes a nuclear bomb. Inside of this world, and he's basically in this Reddit article from like 2013. He's like describing all this scary shit that's coming. And I'm not trying to scare people who's listening to this. I'm just saying like, hey, this is where it could go if you don't have base Bitcoiners building these systems.
Yeah. I mean, a lot comes to mind there. I mean, I think about the
We can
fact-
still change this, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 points that come to mind for me. First is, you know, Bitcoin is a truth machine, right? And Bitcoin eviscerates the liars. And so if you've built your whole life, you've built everything on a house of sand, on lies,
Yeah.
you'll do anything to try to stop that from falling down.
Yeah.
But the truth always comes out. And so, of course, they're
Yeah.
going to hate Bitcoin. You know, Jesus talks about this too. You walk
Yeah.
with me, they'll hate you, right? And I think, you know, a lot of the world, a lot of negative social interactions I've observed, a lot of it just comes down to you're holding up a mirror to somebody else and they don't like what it says about their self-image. You know what I mean? When they look at something that you've done, even if it's totally neutral or even friendly, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So that's the truth of how humans are. You know, one of the more singular things you've said is just, you know, some people are just filled with hate. You know, that's the truth, and that's how it is. And so that's the first thing that comes to mind. The second thing that comes to mind is that, you know, fundamentally speaking, in a lot of ways, Bitcoin's a defensive technology, right? There's offensive technologies, there's defensive technologies, and so, you know, when you're working in a defensive technology, sometimes all you really need to do is slow things down and bog down the offensive players.
Interesting.
Just make their life harder. So, you know, seeing what was happening with Bitcoin infiltrating the government, I was kind of more hopeful that it would slow things down long enough to buy us enough time to just keep it going. No, you know, no extreme actions for long enough that it solidifies itself. And I think we're starting to get to that point. I mean, I think I don't take anything for granted. I don't get complacent, but we are, in that sense, I think we're on somewhat of a good path. But
Do you think it's slowing? So you're saying you think?
Well, I think we slowed down the assaults on Bitcoin. I mean, I'd really like to see the samurai guys freed. I'm perplexed by what's going on there now. I'm really hoping that they, one way or another, are freed and vindicated. Same goes with the Tornado Cash stuff. But I think the total onslaught that was planned has definitely slowed down.
Oh yeah, totally. I think if there's one thing that came out of the Trump election, Ross, and then all those things getting removed, that has definitely benefited us. That I'm grateful for. Everything else is kind of a shit show, but can't have it both ways.
Totally.
I'm a lifetime subscriber of CASCDR. I'm an OG. You should do a little badge.
Yeah.
You should do a little badge.
You want it to be a Noster badge? What do you want?
No, just
Some ad testing.
so this podcast, I was one of the first ones who got early days on the
feed page.
on the feed page. Yeah, so if you go to, we don't have vanity URLs yet, but at some point you'll roll it out. But yeah, you could go to early days and you could make clips and do all that kind of stuff and share the links and stuff like that. But yeah, we were paying for we were paying for Jamie Pro, all that stuff, and it's been working fantastic. I've been giving you a lot of feedback on it, and yeah, I just right now I'm like, man, I just need more time in the day, but I've been traveling and stuff like that. So, but now you're rolling out some new stuff, which I highly recommend everybody check out if you're looking for. I would say it's more of an assistant, if anything, kind of like a junior assistant that can make your podcast a lot easier to just to streamline it. That's what I would say, because now it's much more easier than it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Go ahead
Yeah.
and tell people what it is so they can check it out.
So yeah, we have pull that up Jamie.ai, and we're rolling out sort of a new paradigm. There's really two tracks. One is kind of the free track. So we have basically a Perplexity clone. You can search the web. So I think you've used that on Stacker News. People love that one. And it's freemium up to a point. Same goes for being able to search your favorite podcast. So I have mostly Bitcoiner focused podcasts, a couple mainstream ones.
And that one's such a unique one, right? That one's so unique.
Yeah, and you can search and find the exact part that you want to find, share it with a friend. You could just get a quick link.
Did you know Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan's used that, dude. I know he's had, because we sent him a video. I've tagged him on a video of pull it up Jamie, like searching, and then he had a podcast where he talked about like people on the frontiers of Bitcoin. And did you see that?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, if you're like a super Bitcoin creator type dude, you're in a world of your own. You're existing in the most sophisticated layers of the technological power of the likes the world's never seen before. Never seen anything like it. And you're the people that are at the head of the code. You're the people that are making AI.
Yeah, you're like Christopher Columbus or whatever. You're the fucking. You're on the.
Christopher Columbus
You're on
is
the
great,
edge,
bro. That's great,
dude. If people, that's why I've said this for years. People with autism are they are the link between regular people and machines. That's where we're headed. It's all. No, in 2 generations, everyone will have autism. You won't be able to find anybody that doesn't have it or that doesn't kind of freak out if like somebody's like whistling or whatever.
He did talk about that, huh?
And then I was like, what the hell? Like he was actually talking about like, I mean,
we're 2 blocks away, man.
He's like literally
right
three
there.
down
Same side of the street.
Same side of the street, dude.
Yeah.
Like I know he was talking about us.
Yeah, he probably
he had to have seen
dabbled in it. He's probably so good.
It's named after his producer, dude.
So yeah, just kind of rounded out. So we have like the free tier, and so there's the web search, there's the podcast search. You can find the exact part. You can play it in the browser. You can get like a quick link to send to your friend. It'll dump them in the timestamp that you send, and then also you can clip it and make like little audio wave video clips that you can share on social media. That's like the basic level, and then there's another level on top of that, which is Jamie Pro, which is what you're using, and so you get your own dedicated feed page, sort of like what Transistor offers, I believe, and with a Lightning address where you can get paid, and also you get an area where you can you get AI curated clips. So every time you drop a pod, it'll analyze your podcast, find top clips that you're likely to enjoy based on your preferences, and then it'll tee them up so you click one button and it'll share to both Twitter and Nostr. So
it's amazing.
We just got cross posting, and so I know you're using it. I know Marty's using it. Other people are starting to use it. I know Strenger uses it. This other track, which is so you can make clips and cross posts. You can also upload arbitrary media. So I know Marty's using that pretty hardcore, and so is Alex Strenger.
What is that? Tell me that part.
Yeah, so maybe even there's a lot going on.
Yeah, because I haven't.
Yeah, basically you can upload arbitrary media up to a point. I think there's a limit of like a gigabyte, but you can upload a video to or audio or whatever images to Jamie, and then you can cross post to both Twitter and Nostr with one button.
Okay,
so
cool.
So people have been using that. People are excited about that, and so that's helping people kind of step up their Nostr presence, because it's hard to kind of manage both. And so I've heard from people that use it, it saves them 50 to 70% of the time, dude, that they normally spend.
I think this one button thing is the game changer for people that make podcasts and the people that make produce stuff, because like for us, the bulk of the time for us as podcasts and producers and content and creators is the actual creation of the thing. That we don't have enough time to do everything else. Like the bulk of the time is the editing, is the booking of the guests, is the preparation of the podcast. Like, so like for you doing this podcast, like I was thinking about it last night. What I'm going to talk to Jim about, how's the flow of the show going to go, like all that kind of stuff. And then even before the show, I was thinking about it while I was taking a shower. I was thinking about it later in the thing, like how am I going to get Jim comfortable, all this kind of things that you would not think, but it's in the back of my head. I'm thinking about it all day, right? Anytime I have a person on, I'm thinking about it for like the whole day. So it's on the top of my mind, like the whole day. So it's a mental thing that I'm doing all day, thinking about it leading up to the show. The other thing I would say is like the other part of it is the editing, the post edit, right? So right now I'm still editing the podcast, and then you got to publish it. And there's a lot of, I'm always been obsessed with the edit, the post stuff, the post production stuff. Like I like a very detailed summary. I like a very detailed thing. I like to post it on all these places. So the last thing I want to do is spend another 30, 40 minutes on like posting it to all these individual places. So something like Jamie Pro, where it's just like one button. I take the podcast, one button, boom, 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 boom. That's all I want to do. I don't want to spend any more time paying a subscription to do an additional hour, 2 hours. I just want to do boom, 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 boom. If I was, I'd just pay somebody an extra whatever to do that. Does that make sense?
Totally. And you know, the promise of AI really is just automation at the end of the day. It's a more sophisticated form of automation, and everything we do, we try to make a force multiplier for you. So that's music to my ears. And, you know, really it's just about removing as many steps as you can without having to compromise too much on quality, you know. And so Jamie, you know, what it's for is, you know, you have an idea of, oh, that was a cool part of this conversation with Jim. I can go search it. I can clip it super fast instead of having to sit down, find the timestamp, mess around. You know, oh, I can't find it in the transcript. Where is it in the transcript? Like the cool thing about Jamie is it's semantic search, so you don't have to be a keywords expert. You can kind of get a gist of what you're looking for, and it'll generally surface it within the top 5.
Yeah. I think the cool thing too, as well, like if you're just somebody who's a fan of like podcasts, like in general, like even like me, like when I used to do IT, if I was just a fan of podcasts, I think I would sign up for Jamie, or I would just use it as a user, because I was obsessed with podcasts back then, and I would just listen to all sorts of podcasts, and I'd be like, oh, what was that episode where somebody said something, and I could go search for it and like pull that up, you know. That's the cool part too.
And Jamie has a pretty generous free tier, but once you exceed that, you can pay in Bitcoin. So and it's just like per call, it's like 21 sats per like clip or per search after you hit, I think it's like 15 per month. So it's pretty generous. And that way you're not like locked into a big bill. If you want unlimited usage, you can do $10, whatever works for you. There's a $10 plan. The Jamie Pro plan is a little more sophisticated, so it's $50 plan. So that's what you're on. That's what a bunch of other people are on.
Where do you think it goes to here in the next 18, 24 months? Do you think it's just going to keep leading to more and more better tools, or do you think
more and more automation? I mean, obviously, like, you know, my suppliers are the big labs, so depending on what they come up with, that'll affect some things. But using more sophisticated models for cheaper, like being able to do more iterations, higher quality control in terms of like, you know, because some of the clips, it's like, all right, that actually wasn't that great a clip. Probably I would say I make 5 clips, at least 4 of them are bangers, and that's been validated over like, you know, some pretty big accounts retweeting my stuff all the time when I post them through to my account. So so there's that, and then just being able to almost treat like your podcast as a knowledge base that you can tap off of. So what you're talking about earlier, one of the things I'm thinking about in this conversation is you're talking about your preparation for the podcast. You know, imagine that you have an assistant that has listened to or that has access to your previous podcasts, and you're able to prompt it with the background of the person that you're going to speak to, and maybe it helps you prep and think around different ideas for getting them comfortable, good topics to discuss, and using it in that capacity, almost like an advisor.
That'd be cool. I think the thing that I've come to realize, like So I'm doing the bulk of the stuff in Riverside now. I think a lot of podcasters are. And it's really inexpensive, but their 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 editing is still kind of like they make mistakes, but it's forgivable because they don't charge a lot. You know what I mean? And it works for a lot of the stuff that they do. I will say though that I could see a world where Jamie could start merging into that kind of vein where I'm kind of already seeing you move into that, whether you know it or not, because I don't think you've taken a look at Riverside at all.
I've used it. I mean, we're
Oh,
on it
you,
now. I mean, I've used it as like a guest several times, and
you have.
tons of respect for what they're doing. And I
Oh,
think
they're like
they're kind of
like funded through the wazoo though.
yeah, and they're different, almost a different niche in a way. Like
Yeah.
Jamie's about getting lo-fi clips fast, like helping you with
Yeah.
research and promotional content and doing it
Yeah.
fast and removing as many steps as possible to get you what you
Yeah.
need. That's really what it's about. It's less about like the infra level stuff that they're really doing.
Well, what's interesting though is like even they're like their dashboard and the way they're structured, you can do like this whole editing stuff in there, and it's like it's starting to become to where it's like a full on edit, and they use AI, I'm sure, and they're using all this stuff, and I'm wondering like where do you see all that kind of stuff going, like with AI and stuff? Do you think it's just going to get more and more in the browser and stuff like that?
I think it'll get better. It's tough. It's tough to say. I start thinking about like how certain disciplines lend themselves well to AI and others don't. So code lends itself well because there's more or less a right answer. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. There's clumsier ways to do things, but generally speaking, like, the level of satisfaction of the user is relatively apparent. And so it's easier for them to iterate on software engineering type stuff. And it's such a lucrative market. It's such a premium market. So it makes sense for them to go after that. Some of the media editing stuff, maybe a little less so. I think it'll start to get better, but really it comes back to like you need a feedback mechanism to say this was bad and this is why it was bad. This was good and this is why it was good. I think you do sometimes need that feedback loop, and that's one of the things we're going to start incorporating into Jamie. The cool thing about Bitcoin is it makes it that type of collaboration maybe even easier, because you can say, hey, if you answer this survey or give me feedback, I can give you 50 sats or whatever it's worth, whatever's fair, right? So like incorporating that control loop back into things, and I think about control loops all the time. That was my job before, was to create. It's called a closed loop control loop. And bears striking resemblance to how neural nets work and how they converge on an answer the same way that your thermostat converges on the temperature that you're setting, all kinds of other control systems you use every day that you don't think about. But the whole world and nature itself is predicated on that very, very powerful principle of negative feedback loops that force you to converge on the correct answer.
Because you're building another product, right? What is it called?
Clara.
Why'd you pick that name for?
Well, a couple of reasons. First is, it's a Spanish woman's name, so I
Did you say a girl named Clara?
I had a crush on a girl in my Spanish class named Clara. That was her Spanish name, anyway. Anyway, so that aside, but it means it's clarity, and so we're building a tool. For those of you that don't know, we build a tool that's been used by Travis County, probably going to be used in the next counties next door as well. That helps people translate body cam footage from interactions with people, generally Spanish speakers, translate into English so that their attorney can more effectively identify exculpatory evidence or other important information that helps them get a more fair trial. So it stands for clarity, but it's also a Spanish woman's name, and our logo is Lady Liberty, or not Lady Liberty, Lady Justice, Lady Justice, blind justice, right, fairness, justice, clarity.
And what possibilities do you see with was it Clara?
Yeah,
Clara. What possibilities do you see that as it grows, or do you find yourself switching between the projects? Or
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt you have to switch. Some of the biz dev stuff, attorneys can move kind of slow, so that affects things. I think law is ripe for disruption, and I think people are already seeing it. I think it's a challenging engineering problem from the standpoint that you really have to ground it in reality and accuracy. You can't get away with hallucinations, but it's once again, it's one of those um, higher margin applications, just like software engineering. They get paid a lot. So being able to increase efficiency has much more benefit. The legal translations are absurdly expensive. They're totally unaffordable. So we're bringing that into view for them, but also just, I'm excited to start using things like what the open secret guys are working on and figuring out how you can use that in a law application. Now that I have customers and good relationships through the Clara thing, figuring out how we can help them level up in other aspects of their business. Or at first it'll be tangential. It'll be, help describe this transcript to me, or, cross-reference legal theories to me. But in order to do that, you have to have very locked down privacy and security. And I think what they're doing is really good tool for that type of stuff.
yeah, so hypothetically, this leads to, I mean, this is me just kind of playing the tape, but hypothetically, this could potentially lead to better privacy for people that interact with the law, and if especially if they're using like open secret or something, and then as opposed to using something like OpenAI. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I was thinking more from the attorney side, but that's actually an interesting marketing idea where you could make a very like generous free tier where, as you said, you can reliably ask legal questions relevant to you. That might take a lot of elbow grease, but that's an interesting, almost like freemium marketing type or consumer type app that would probably get your foot in the door and some other, maybe even some attorneys. Because that's really where the money is. So I've been more focused on the biz dev. That's a lot different than Jamie.
Somebody even say that's a humanitarian thing too.
Oh, for sure. I mean, everything we do, if you think about Bitcoin itself, it's almost like a Second Amendment for your money in a way, right? It's self-custody of your money. It's taking responsibility for your money like you would with your self-defense. First Amendment, Noster, right? That type of stuff, encryption, Fourth, Fifth Amendment, and I see Clara's Sixth Amendment. Sixth Amendment's your right to a fair trial. So it's all aligned. And, this is what I'm talking about when I say that it really matters who builds the technology just as much as like what they end up building, because they're deeply intertwined.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's yeah, it's like you want to move towards peace and not confusion, not chaos, not uncertainty, but a peaceful resolution. And I think what you're describing there is more of that. And it seems like what did they have in place before? It was just regular people transcribing?
Yeah, it was like at least 5 times the price. I mean, as I get going, I'll probably be able to bring down the price even more. But yeah, it was like 5 times the price to do these legal translations. And it's understandable. They got to sit through a whole transcript, right? The AI is still not infallible, but really for them, it's a decision of, do I have like a somewhat fallible AI transcription, or do I just not do it and tell the client you're on your own? Like that sucks too, because there might be really important interactions they have with the police that either reduce their sentence or exonerate them.
Oh, it sounds like you got your work cut out for you, man. It sounds like you have 2 projects inside of CASCDR that are on their way. Is there anything that's coming up that you want to tell people about that they should look out for? And where can they find you and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so pull that up, Jamie. If you're a podcaster and this piqued your interest and you're interested in being able to search your podcast, being able to interact with your podcast in a way that's very UX friendly and fast, go check out pullthatupjamie.ai. You can start ingesting your own podcast for free. You get 2 per month, so that's about to roll out soon, probably by the time this drops. And so you'll be able to make promotional content a breeze. It could be like car and cross post to Noster, stuff like that. So that's a big one. And then also, if you're a liberty minded person, if what I talk about excited you and any attorneys that have to service bilingual clients, we do have commissions for people that make introductions that lead to sales. So I know there's a bunch of guys down in San Antonio that know people all over the state. They're probably going to help us out. I know even some guys in Tampa Bay are looking at helping
Oh,
out
nice.
in that way. So, we're pretty early there. We're about to start getting some pretty like regular customers. So that's going to be really great. Let us reinvest in programs like that.
Do they just need to be in like legal areas, or can it just be other types of?
It could be really anywhere. I mean, I'd have to look at the exact dynamics. I mean, it's got to lead to a sale. It's not a charity, but like a lot, it's all over. I mean, the Sun Belt is probably where a lot of the sales will come in, but I'm
Dude,
even
that's
talking to
amazing.
like somebody in Virginia. Virginia's got a huge Central American population, so that's highly relevant.
Dude, that's amazing how like no one's tapping into this market yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what we're talking about building on the edge. Like these AI labs, sure, they're going to do really important R&D. Hats off to them, but at the end of the day, it takes somebody that won't take no for an answer to really build the hardcore application that and really do with excellence. And this is something that we talk about at the lab. This is something I talk about with Keon at Stacker News all the time. Of we're gonna find out who the real. We have vibe coding, which is great. I do it myself. I'm not knocking it, but we're gonna find out who's really like committed to excellence and who's
Right.
really gonna get it to the point, to the final finish line, because it's very easy to get lazy with vibe coding, and I think we're all guilty of it on some level.
Yeah.
But you have to
be consistent.
be consistent and rigorous.
You got to put in the work. You got to show up every day, even when you don't want to. You got to do it.
Yeah.
You got to just put in the work. That's something to say. You got to turn down parties and turn on your computer and get to work, even when you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
It's saying no when you should say yes. Or wait, saying no when you should say yes. It's doing work when you should be doing otherwise. I was going to say the other thing is like, yeah, it's all the people that are doing the consumer stuff. Like everybody's focused on the consumer stuff right now, and they're chasing after the consumer stuff, when in reality, like maybe it's all the other stuff that's no one's touching right now. That's where people are actually willing to actually pay the money for.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And also just we talked about the interoperability of AI agents. Like, how are you going to build an economy of agents if you don't have agents that are good at, if you don't have like a good agent employee yet? Like, you got to build the employees before you have them create like a monetary network with each other. So that's kind of been more my focus. I talked about this at Startup Day. I think we're still kind of on track of what I was saying is, first barrier, what's the barrier between us and what's called the machine payable web, this economy of agents paying each other. It's 3 things. It's the reliability issue. That's just a technical issue. And we do partially rely on the R&D side of the equation there. I think it's going to get better, but it's still not there. And then you have to have the proliferation of agents in different applications, right? You have to have like almost the specialization that actually makes the AI employees interoperating valuable. Like, you have to have that, and then you have to have like the actual like philosophical alignment of being open to open systems or accepting Bitcoin, right? Because you could just as well have all of those 2 things, but have Amazon or Apple or whoever control those, or buy out all of the small startups that control those, and then you don't really have an AI economy. So I think for this to take place, you really have to like cover the fundamentals first, and then build out to this sci-fi future.
It's kind of making me think now, like, who's building the Walmart of AI? Like, who's building that boring company of AI? Like, who's building the Target of AI? Like, who's building the Sam's Club? Who's building the Costco of AI?
Yeah.
Like, who's doing that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if anybody. Maybe you. I'm not saying you're boring, but I'm saying like,
Yeah, and that's why I
who's
don't
building the
That's why, I always talk about don't be above the process. Like you said, you got to show up every day. I'm not above the process. If somebody has an idea they want to discuss with me, I always entertain it because the best ideas come from everywhere. And once again, like you got to build the agent first before you can build the economy of agents or the network of agents, right? And so we have so many building blocks for agents. We have so much like tribal knowledge that we've accumulated from all, even just the ideas we've entertained that not necessarily as executed. They're in my Rolodex now, and I've actually built modules simply because I can see clearly that it's gonna be useful later. All these little tools that are gonna be useful later. So I think we're doing it the right way of seeking actual revenue and profits now with these applications and just kind of stockpiling. I say stack
Interesting. So
user,
stacking all these
stack
Legos,
users, stack agents, stack modules and know-how, like those three
and then
things.
much later you can start.
And you stay in the game as long as possible until you can unleash that. And I think we're getting there.
Yeah, that's I was talking to Christopher too from Open Agency, but it was kind of like one of those similar things where it's like he's thinking the same thing too, because the longer you stay in the game, the more you know. And you guys have been building on it probably the longest in the Bitcoin space at this point. I know you guys don't like to pat yourselves on the back about that, but I don't mind doing that.
Yeah. I mean, it's I think it's critical. I think it's critical for humanity that this happens. So I get up every day and I push myself to my limits to try to make this positive feature a reality.
But now that you have like all these modules that you describe, is it literally just Lego blocks that you can start putting all these pieces together?
It's not quite that simple, but that's the direction it'll move in the long run. There's still friction, but that gets whittled away by the day.
Because Cascader has infrastructure already built? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we have infrastructure already built. The LLMs themselves keep getting better. The broad understanding of how these things work gets better because at the end of the day, right? What's the point if you already know how to do everything? What's the point of the machine payable web or the economy of agents? Like, there's really no point. Really, what you need is to have peers that are specialized in different niches, just in the same way that humans are specialized in particular jobs and they exchange money for them, right? But first you got to build up like inner competence before you have that like interoperability.
So does the startup capital become a hindrance at some point for other AI companies to start?
In what way? Just having too much capital can be a problem.
Well, no, I mean, well, obviously we know the answer to that, but I'm saying like, so let's say hypothetically 5 months from now, there's an AI company that wants to start doing something similar that you're doing or what Christopher's doing or even what Tony's doing. Is it much harder to do that at that point because they're starting like 3 years, 2 years too late?
Yeah, I mean, I think the know-how adds up. I would never say never. There's advantages, and you know, I think just the different neurodivergence of different people has an effect on the direction they take their company. Like, I'm a very unique guy, and I think it influences
Is it
the
kind of
way I
like,
think. I've had all kinds of different experiences, especially with electrical engineering. It's so goddamn similar to electrical engineering because it's like, okay, I need this component that has these properties. Like, this is the ideal scenario of what I'm looking for. Like, it's building circuits in my head, and I got really good at that. And so
so you
that's
so
what I'm.
so so you're saying it's kind of similar to that where it's like
Yeah, it's like systems engineering. It's like interoperability. It's a lot of more intuition than you would think. It's not just purely like nerd, spurg, math, science stuff. It's like partially intuition and
so you,
art. It's almost artistic in some ways. Like,
so
I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but
but you,
that's kind of how it feels, you know.
so you would have to have gotten either now or like back then.
I'll never say never because there could be somebody doing a job that has nothing to do with AI, but they're picking up skills that actually happen to translate well. Right?
Oh,
And we're
gotcha.
seeing with
Okay.
like vibe coding, it's like, okay, now it matters a little bit less um how good you are at troubleshooting this one little thing because you can have help. But it does matter. Are you able to like put together a coherent vision Are you able to put together? Are you able to like prioritize things? Like it changes the requirements for the skill set. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I will never say like
The
they'll
stack.
never catch me, like or they'll never catch Christopher. They'll never catch OpenAI. Um, there's probably some truth, obviously, as you go up the chain of like OpenAI, that it's harder and harder to compete. But I'll never say never, because we're seeing things that we never thought would happen. Google's starting to get routed, right?
Mhm.
Nobody uses Google anymore. IBM, same thing happened to them. You know,
What do you think about the whole Apple intelligence thing debacle that's kind of going on? Have you been following
I
that?
actually haven't been following that. My understanding is that they haven't really been keeping up with AI very.
What do you think about the
adequately.
Google AI stuff? Do you have any thoughts on that and like how they've
I
been
mean,
able to
they've had
make it
access
come
to
back a little bit?
geniuses for a long time, so I'm not surprised they're kind of bouncing back. But I think they were blindsided. Let's be real, and their lifeblood is the search data that they get coming in, and that's starting to go down. So what's that mean? And they're getting hit by antitrust. I think they just got really complacent, if you think about it, and that's natural when you're so dominant for so long. I'm really not trying to be derogatory, but that's the truth. I use some of their APIs. I'm like, this is unusable. I'm better off scraping. Like
Wow.
when it gets to that point, then you're like, all right, maybe.
And what about some of the other
Yeah.
LLMs that are out there? Any ones that stick out?
Well, I mean, DeepSeek always sticks out. You could spend all your time on eval. We were talking about this the other day in the commons. You could spend all your time on eval, but DeepSeek to me is an interesting phenomenon because it demonstrated how much cheaper you can do training, how much cheaper the tokens can get with just applying novel techniques, not necessarily just throwing more money at the problem. And so when you start reducing the variable cost, that's when things get real interested. Obviously, the fixed cost is important from a capital intensive standpoint, but then, once you produce a model that is it's literally just math, it's literally just a system of equations. It's almost like it's like proof of work in a way, because it's a crystallized lattice of information has value, right? Same way that a published block does. And that exists forever. And if it's lower cost to run that, your variable cost goes way down. If your rent goes to $1, that affects your viability. That affects all the things you can do in Pleb Lab, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus whatever it is now. It's kind of like that.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow, dude. Well, good on you. I've always been bullish on you. You just you can't stop. You can't stop a resilient founder. That's what I say, man. And there's some people that go through brick walls. Jim's one of them. I've always said it.
Yeah, man.
There's one thing that I'm really good at. It's finding talent and choosing it. And I'm never wrong.
Bitcoiners are built different.
They just are. they are, dude. They are. You got any final thoughts?
Nah, I mean, this is really fun. Love being here at Pleb Lab. Love building. Anybody that's interested in pull that up, Jamie, as a podcaster, go check it out. Hit me up at Jim at CASCDR.xyz. Always open to ideas. A lot of people use us as a sounding board for AI implementation, so we offer that as well. Come to us. We can probably help you cut off significant amounts of your timeline.
Do consulting too as well.
Yeah, we do consulting. We can do an opening call. If you come in through a Bitcoiner channel, generally speaking, we'll do like 30 minutes for free. If it's more fiat land, then maybe we'll charge a small fee. And we've helped tons of people cut off significant amounts of their timeline just by having a small short call with us. We tell them exactly what they need to do.
Yeah.
And we're fast at implementing. We're very fast builders. So
Yeah, totally. Yeah, if you have any questions around AI and stuff, definitely hit up Jim. I'll post all the links in the show notes. And yeah, thanks, Jim. Appreciate you.
thanks, Car.